to grow a business, you need lots of people. How does strong leadership drive business success?
We can develop the skills around delegation, which is deciding who to delegate and how to delegate.
Money is a tool to get you the life you want. The end goal is not money. Welcome to today's episode of Elevate Your Wealth, and today I'm joined by a special guest, and he is a leadership coach, and he'll tell us a lot more about what he does. But I'm happy to introduce Charlie Winn. So thanks for joining us on the show today, Charlie.
Thanks so much for having me, Victor. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing having you. Look, I've had lots of great reviews as to what you've done, because I know people that have worked with you. So I was like, we have to have you on the show. We need to ensure, you're letting people know what you can do and giving them some tips as well. So really, really good to have you.
Thank you.
So I guess today we will start off with the usual question as to telling us a bit about yourself, okay, and what got you into leadership coaching and a few hobbies as to what you do.
Okay. So what got me into leadership coaching was I was leading teams, but I was leading teams in the corporate space, and just to me there was a bit of a disconnect in how I could lead, or I felt this disconnect, I should say. And so I then decided to go into consulting, thinking that I could make a much more of an impact with organizations there. And again, in the larger corporate space. And again, I saw this gap of leadership, or at least looked to me like a lack of integrity. Now, the more I spend time in leadership, the more I understand, it's this contradiction that can occur, in particularly these large organizations, between the need for quick returns and then the need to lead people. But I was then inspired through my journey in coaching rugby mostly, but sports in particular, that I just am passionate about helping people and ultimately seeing them shift the way that they think. That's really the key. And in the direction where they can be more able to create a world in their space, in their context that is beneficial to themselves and them around them. And that really is what leadership is to me, is creating your own space. So I then, COVID, which was terrible for many, many areas, also allowed a lot of us to spend more time in discovering more about ourselves. And, I found this purpose, which has continued to grow in me to spend time with people of impact, usually in businesses, and usually about 15 to about 50 or 100 employees that are needing a little more assistance in becoming clear on how they can impact the space that they influence.
That's good. Sounds like there was, as you said, you that kind of started off in rugby. So you're a rugby fan. You play.
You're a very big rugby fan. Rugby.
Okay.
Talk rugby all day.
Okay.
In fact, I'm coaching rugby again this year.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So yes, we're just starting up.
Okay. So who do you coach? Tell us a little bit about that rugby side before we go into the leadership coaching and more questions on that.
So I played for Petersham Rugby back in the early 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. Yeah. And then I went to another club called the Sydney Convicts for a number of years, played and coached them. Okay. But I've come back to Petersham. Oh. So I'm coaching their Colts this year, which is the under 21s.
Amazing.
So we'll see. I haven't coached under 21s. I've always coached open. So it'll be a little different, but I'm looking forward to the challenge. And they're a really great bunch of guys and really keen, which is a fantastic place to start.
Amazing. So when does the season start? When does it end?
So we have our first trial on Saturday.
Okay. Wow.
So we've got training tonight and Thursday, and then the season kicks off in the weekend before Easter. Okay.
Yes. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
You and the team, and hopefully you guys win the championship.
Quietly.
Yes, quietly. So all the best with that.
Thank you.
Okay, so amazing. I think jumping back into leadership coaching, what are the biggest leadership challenges business owners face today?
That's a big and great question. Thank you. I think that there's a couple of things, but number one, and I don't think this has changed that much. It is ultimately understanding who we are as people and understand why we're doing what we're doing. Often, whether it's business owners or executives, find themselves in a space or an organization they might not necessarily know what it is that's actually driving them. And I talked about finding my purpose through COVID.
Yeah.
And that is, how do you link, what makes you passionate, what makes you want to get up every day, and really that's a big leadership challenge, is that if you're not passionate about what you do, or you're not passionate about the people you're working with, then sometimes you can get that disconnect.
I see.
So that's one real leadership challenge, and I do work with clients quite often to understand more about who they are and what their purpose is, and ultimately to understand their strengths, because that kind of leads into the next key leadership challenge, is that if we're not really quite sure of what we are really good at, are we really good at communicating, or are we really good at designing systems, or are we really good at leading people, for example?
Yeah.
Are we spending enough time in that space? And usually, as small business owners in particular, you've got to go into the spaces that's needed right now. You need to generate that revenue, or you need to fix up your profit margins or whatever, and that's absolutely what you need to do then. But long term, when we're trying to create a sustainable business, one that generates enough profit, one that also is able to be there for the people, so we're not burning them out, or we're not disengaging them, either end. So how do you get that balance right? And that then becomes a challenge, is that maybe that key leader, or the inspirational one, is not necessarily the best person to actually lead a team, or to develop the team, or to inspire the team. Maybe they just should be the visionary person that designs what the clients needs, or design the products, etc.
Yeah.
Or go out there and sell it as such, on the stage or something. So so it's then also kind of understanding that key challenge as well. Do we have the right people in the right roles?
Mm.
And then the third part you can kind of add in there is that we can, I'll just use the word ego, can get in the way. So our ego can sometimes, whether it's a societal expectation that we might have put in ourselves, or a limited belief that we've kind of brought up with in our families, for instance, we might think that I need, as a business owner, to be able to do all those things, as in be able to sell them, be the visionary person, lead the team. And the way that, if it's not your strength, then you might just not be able to get the most out of people.
I see.
So the challenge is then understanding what capacity we need and what capabilities we have, and how can we get that mix right. So that's the challenge. And if we've got an ego there, sometimes we're thinking, just do what I say what I'm going to do because I know best. It doesn't often resonate well with the people that you're leading. So you can either get out of your, not allow your ego to get in your way and actually ask for help, or spend the time developing yourself. So if they don't have the capacity or the capability or the desire to develop the team, then that can be a real leadership challenge.
Yeah. You've mentioned some really key points there, and I think even one of them was just knowing your strengths, and sticking to it. And as you said, as business owners, sometimes you have to do everything, because if a team member is on leave or steps away, it's like, well, that has to be done. So how do you do it? So I think, and you also mentioned a thing about impact on knowing your purpose. So is it that, and me just thinking about that, is it that some business leaders are not great at communicating what impact or purpose they have, or they're scared about it? And I have my own answer. So I'm just keen to hear what yours is as to what I feel myself I go through.
It can and often is both. So sometimes we aren't quite sure, and in fact, it takes time, and it takes a bit of courage to be introspective, to be clear about what your purpose is, and then to act upon it, because it can feel quite grey, as in not black and white, I should say. So you're like, oh, do I actually believe in this purpose? Is this what is passionate? And you need to spend some time in that space. So they might not know it, and then to take the next step of even articulating it to other people is, again, scary, because you might be kind of putting yourself out there a bit more and a bit vulnerable. But that's also what makes some of the greatest leaders, is their courage to be vulnerable. And you've got to be vulnerable to yourself first, which really then, and this is where the ego can get in the way so much. So if we don't allow ourselves to kind of be a bit vulnerable, And that's also how we can really inspire and bring people along, because when others can see you being a bit vulnerable, then they know you're human and they'll connect even more deeply with you. Did that answer your?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, no, definitely. I think the key thing I put to it there is being vulnerable, because as a business leader, one, you may not always have the right options, and sometimes you might just feel misunderstood, and it's just the way it is. And even just explain to people, team members, that look, it's just what it is. And when I say it's just what it is, this is what you feel, and they might not understand. And it's you just being vulnerable by communicating that to them. I think it can go a long ways.
Yes. Yeah. Because we don't all have the answers. None of us do have all the answers. And whereas, those almost control, leaders that feel they need to be in control all the time, or kind of a command style leadership, is they're going to suggest or imply that they know everything when we don't. And that often creates a disconnect between people. But there are times when you need that style of leadership. So let's say beginning of COVID, that kind of stuff, or right at the beginning of startup, sometimes that type of leadership. But it's not sustainable to keep it either for the business or for themselves.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's definitely a key thing. I think one of our values in the company is vulnerability. And
fantastic.
Yeah. So definitely encourage the team, and I try to be vulnerable myself from time to time, because I personally think vulnerability leads to empathy, especially when you understand, okay, what's going on at home, why someone may not be performing at full capacity. It's like, then you're more empathetic.
Yes.
In my opinion, anyway. So yes.
Have you read Brené Brown? Any of her work?
No.
I think you should.
Okay.
Yep. I'll send you a book. Dare to Lead is fantastic, and it's right in that space you're talking about.
Okay. So what's the title? So the viewers out there.
Dare to Lead.
Dare to Lead. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I've read Dare to Lead.
Yeah. By Brené Brown. Yeah.
I've read Dare to Lead. Well, I've listened to it. I'm a Audible fan. So.
I'm a reader. I've got to be able to go back and I'll get them out, and I kind of look at. She's got some amazing quotes. Amazing, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, I love that book as well. Dare to Lead. So, and I guess lots of people are great leaders, but they might shy away from it as well due to different things. Like me personally, I think I've been very comfortable leading because I've always had the right relationships from my family and support that has just always given me the ability to, that's fine. Yeah, I can do that. I can lead. So I think huge dynamics that actually come into leadership and vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And support.
Yes. And it sounds like you're replicating that support you had from your family, or the leadership was shown by someone key around you in the early days.
Yeah.
And you're replicating that to some extent in your own style.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying. So I think the superhero there was my mom. So yeah, she's a great leader and a great person. So, okay. So I guess moving into, how does strong leadership drive business success? And, when I think about this, sometimes it's very hard to measure that because there's no metrics saying, you hear of great leaders and how the company is doing well, but, how does that actually drive business success, leadership? How does great leadership?
So great leadership, and you're absolutely right. Because there's so many different types of leaders. You've got your visionary leaders, Steve Jobs and people that were not great people leaders at all. But then you might have some more of the inspirational people leaders as such. That are more coaching style, what we refer, or Goleman talks about the coaching style. And you've got. There's multiple different types, and the thing that as what I try to work with people is to try to be as authentic as possible. So we try to understand what style or what that strengths can they bring into that. Now, your question was around how does it impact businesses,
business success? Yes.
So ultimately, once we can then spend time in understanding, their authentic style, it's understanding how can we ensure that the business can develop in a manner that is going to complement the strength of the people around there. So, and having the vulnerability or having the ability to actually know that you can't do everything means that you're then going to be consciously finding the right people to fit into the need for that business and that business success. So, I always encourage people to look at getting the right people into the organization first. and ensuring that there's the cultural connection or the alignment of the values, which we talk a lot about,
Yeah.
and also understanding more about their mindset. So it's about building that team, and so maybe it's the visionary person might not be the best person to do that, but they should have a significant input into it, and ensuring that then the business is set up for success because you've got the right people that are aligned and all heading in the same or similar direction, and then being able to kind of develop that. Now, the other key element to ensure is that you have all the spaces covered. So whether it's the financial performance or whether it is developing the people, whether it is the visionary part of that, and ensuring that all the different spaces are covered as well. And to remove one's ego out of the way, that allows you to kind of see, I don't have the strengths to jump into the finances, for example. That's not my strength or my superpower. So I then need to make sure I've got someone to cover that space.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's looking at that rather than assuming that I can do everything. Does that answer?
Yeah. So it does. I think, the strong leaders recognize what they're not good at, because once they get someone good at that thing, there's business success, because they're just not good at it. And to build good teams, or to just grow or to grow a business, you need lots of people. You can definitely not do that alone.
Yes, or at least you have connections to bring in the right people.
Yeah.
So whether you're outsourcing or whether you have people like that, I suppose one thing I probably haven't emphasized enough, though, it is having a clear vision. So if you have the clear vision, then you can build and you can develop that. So I was talking a lot about the people, which is what I focus mostly on. Yeah. But if there's not a clear vision, there's not a North Star, if you will, which is where some of the work around purpose with that visionary style leader, is really powerful, is then we can crystallize that vision of, well, where do you want to go? How do you want to bring this, either your purpose or the organization's purpose out much more? So it's having the vision and then having the right people. Yeah. Then, and as long as you have all the key other elements in place, then you'll get business success. Okay. And driven, of course. Yeah.
So I guess a key question for me there is, what if someone wants to run a business but they don't have a vision? Isn't the vision really key to even starting or running a business?
Yes. You've got to have a vision, because otherwise you're probably just going to create a commoditized style organization. You might be just following someone else. So you don't have a vision that is slightly different, then you're unlikely to be able to inspire others to join you, or definitely unlikely to be able to inspire others to of the caliber you're probably going to need to create a really successful company. So you need that vision, and you need to be able to also inspire people by being able to clearly articulate that vision as well.
Yeah. So do you help, let's assume there's a business owner out there that doesn't have a vision, but they really believe they should be running a business or are running a business. Can you help them craft the vision, or how does that work?
So short answer is yes, I can, and I have done quite a few times. The main thing is then coming back to what their purpose is, and then within that what they're passionate about and what they're skilled at. Because it actually almost always comes back to self-awareness. Yeah. So are we aware what I'm passionate about? Am I aware what I'm really good at, or what my skills are that can then overlap between the what I'm passionate about as well. Okay. So once we can find that, then we can then take that to the next. Okay, well, let's start to brainstorm some different organizations and visions or types of spaces, and then look at that. Now you can either do that with one person, or if maybe there was a couple of people or three people, then you can even take that further. But absolutely, so that's the process that I'd follow, and then just inspire them or challenge them and spend time them to try and articulate that vision. Yeah, and then we kind of move down. We can get more and more granular depending on where they're at on their journey of developing that vision. But if people are stuck, you need to usually go back to almost always need to go back to those foundations or fundamentals. Yeah, which is what's inside us.
What's inside, yeah, and everyone has something inside, So yes, you might not have a vision, but there might be some impact which you're trying to achieve or a purpose, yes. And then that leads to helping them craft that vision. So yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I guess that kind of follows on to the next one where lots of people are stuck in the day-to-day running of the business day
Yeah.
to day. Let's call that the whirlwind that just
Yes,
comes up.
I love that.
Emails
Yep.
and everything. So, how do you help those businesses get out of that day-to-day routine? And how do you help them think strategically? How do you help them become better leaders?
So what I usually do is try to connect them back to why they started. So kind of what we just talked about. So we usually kind of reflect, and usually they can articulate that, and we reflect, we start there, and then we'll come down, we'll then chunk it down. So I call it a goal setting workshop, which is a little easier to understand, but we start a bit higher in that sense. It's like, okay, well, what is your vision? And if they can easily articulate that, then we start there. Or if they struggle with that, then we go back to purpose and go back to fundamentals, as I kind of said before. But if we have the vision and we'll look, 5 to 10 years ahead, and if we can articulate that and it resonates, with the people in the room, which would include me as a facilitator, which is how I'd see my role in that situation. And then once we've got that, we go, okay, well, what are the goals that we need to achieve to bring that vision to life?
Yeah.
And then we'll then go from there, okay, let's chunk that down again. Let's get down into look at the operations and the finances and the people side of things and the governance side of things and then see what goals we need to get. And then we keep breaking them down as such till they then have these really clear and smart goals that they can attach themselves to. So we can then develop that and then also allocate accountability and ensure that people kind of know what they're doing. Or what we'll do is identify that there's some gaps.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some gaps in their skills, or maybe there's gaps in their capacity, or maybe there's, something else that they need.
Yeah, yes. And, it's a very individualistic because people need different things at setting points in time.
And organizations need different things at different points of time as well. So, as they grow, they then need their CFO, or they need a virtual CFO or a virtual HR, for instance. But the really small ones don't necessarily need that. So as you go on your journey, then you need different things to reach out. And this is where, bringing on all those virtual CFOs or virtual HR people really is very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I think with bringing all those people on as well, what happens is some people still struggle with delegation because they're like, okay, yes, I have someone there, but I don't want to do that. Or the person is asking too many questions. I'll just do it myself. And this is regardless of whether you have contractors or you have people in the team.
Yeah.
Because I think business owners sometimes, or I think good business owners are so used to doing everything that, maybe it's a control thing, maybe it's an ego thing, whatever. But how would you guide those people to delegation? What would be your...
It's a great question, and it's a key part in a few of my workshops and programs that I run. So you've hit the nail on the head. It often is that desire for control, or maybe they're making excuses to themselves that only I can do this, as well as this client wants. And I've linked it to an excuse because that's often what it is. They use an excuse to not delegate it because they don't like to lose control often. So what we've got to be aware of, or at least the mindset I try to get them to think about is, well, what's this going to look like in 3 months' time, or even 6 months or a year's time? They're very likely going to become bottleneck for whatever work. And in fact, they're probably not going to be providing the service to their client, to use the same example, that the client needs, because they might need a little faster response, for example. And in fact, if they're not spending time in that space enough, they're probably not developing that skill with the client or understand the client. Whereas if they delegate, they're not only elevating the person they're delegating to and upskilling that person, but they're empowering them and they're developing, therefore they're engaging them. And they're likely to creating a much better outcome for the client that they've delegated the task to the people that report to them. So what we're doing is we're also not only creating capacity because other people are being delegated to, but they're creating the capability in the people they're delegating to. So that's what we're doing. And if we don't think about that from that perspective, we actually create this bottleneck and we keep the capacity of the organization down. But unless we consider it in that sense, in the longer term, we're really going to be challenging the organization. So I've talked all about mindset there, is the mindset of the person that's delegating. Now, we can develop the skills around delegation, which is deciding who to delegate and how to delegate and how close should we be to the person that we've delegated the task to, for example. And that depends on the risks of the organization, but also the skill of the person being delegated to. So we'll start with mindset, because that's often the thing that's holding back that person that's delegating. And if we can then get them to understand that and work at their mindset first, then that's assuming that control piece or that ego, as you mentioned, is holding them back from delegating it.
Yeah. Very, very good insights. And I think I recently read a book that changed my life and the way I thought about this kind of things. Have you read 10x is easier than 2x by Dan Sullivan?
No, I haven't.
Okay. The whole concept there is, and I think for people like me, I'm easy with the vision. I can easily see the vision or craft the vision. So, but it talks about, 10x is easier because when you 10x your business or grow 10 times, or even if you just think about what that looks like, it's a lot easier to delegate because there's no way you can.
Yes, right.
Yeah, there's no way you can 10x your effort. Because people are like, well, okay, it's just twice that, I'll do it. I just want to grow 2 times more. I'll work harder, I'll work longer. While as if you think about going 10 times, then all of a sudden it's like, I can't do this alone. I need to delegate. I need to outsource. I need to get people to help, which is a very important thing. So that's one of the recent books that I read that really changed my thought around delegation and just ensuring people you're helping upskill them so they can, create more free time for you to work on the bigger level, higher level vision.
That's another great way mindset shift to do in the same space. So great. I'll need to read that.
Yes, you should. It's a good book. I think, and one of the other books that I've listened to. I keep saying read, but I listened to a lot. One of the other books I listened to was Phil Knight's book, the Nike, the brand. And he talked about how sometimes business leaders as well, or just managers, business owners in general, they are expecting a lot from the younger people who don't have as much experience. So he talked about how you should be patient. So even though you delegate, it's being patient with them to kind of upskill and get to a level where you can fully trust and leave them to handle everything. So,
because the other element just add in there is to allow them to, or to layer in there, expecting them to fail. Now, failure is not black and white. There can be a bit of, but having that mindset around failure is that we learn from it and we develop. So I kind of talked about risk and the skill of the person a little earlier. It's knowing what you are delegating and how close you are to them. But you almost want them, or if you think about wanting them almost to fail so they learn faster, that is another way to continue to develop and create that culture of learning and openness to development, which can sometimes feel a bit contradictory to almost want them to fail, but it does mean that they learn faster, because we learn a lot faster by failure than by as long as we're open to it. Open to it, and I guess obviously we're assuming the person's personality is right, which is open to learning. Yes, so Carol Dweck's work of growth mindset and fixed mindset, we're talking about people more on the growth mindset or encouraging that as much as possible.
Yeah. So, I think sometimes when you talk about delegation and outsourcing as well, there's a financial aspect into that. And most business leaders are thinking, well, that's more money. I'll do it myself. It's easier. Is there any link to strong leaders and smart financial decisions?
So we'll come back to mindset again, because this is usually the thing I've referred a bit of the ego. It's just kind of tied in a little bit. And it's thinking about, so what I get to do is get business owners to think about their total revenue for the organization, at least, or they want it to be, and look at how many hours they have in their month or year, and then think about how much per hour that they need to be generating, or at least the profit. Now, if you think about that per hour, let's say it's 10,000, right, which is probably not unreasonable. Then if they think of what they're doing, they need to generate $10,000 an hour. is the work that they're doing going to generate $10,000 in that hour? So, or if in 2 years' time it needs to be, 20,000 an hour, are the things they're doing right now in that hour that they're not delegating going to get them there? Because that then is a key blockage again. Whereas if they're paying someone, half or a third, or yeah, exactly. So
$200 an hour.
Yes.
That's $400,000.
Exactly.
As a salary.
So if you can think of it from that perspective, you're like, well, where should I be spending my time? Should I be spending it with my potential clients, or trying to cross upsell or land new clients, for instance, or look at how to ensure the profitability of the organization shifting, or recruiting the right person, the right seat? That's going to have huge impacts, as opposed to maybe some of the stuff they should be delegating, which is often that urgent stuff that clients are shouting about, which is responding, to an email or doing some data entry. That stuff you're going to be getting rid of, or putting systems in place to
help with that. Yeah. So in other words, great leaders make good money decisions.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. Great leaders, money is it's like the blood in ourselves.
Yeah.
It moves things around our bodies, and so money moves things around the organization.
Yeah.
So if you don't take note of the money, the cash flow, and the profitability, or how different products are performing or not performing, or having clients, or have different segments of clients are performing or not performing, then you're really not taking note of the thing that's actually allowing the organization to either to grow or to innovate or to bring on the right people.
Yeah.
So it's fundamental.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've recently been using this phrase, and I honestly don't know where I got it from. So if I'm stealing someone's phrase, I apologize. But it's money is a tool to get you the life you want. The end goal is not money. So, and I know money is such a secret but important topic that people don't really talk about as much, and then feel that they should. But it's not about having $2 million generally. It's about, okay, what life does that give you? And by the time you start looking at things that way, let's assume you only have $200,000, you start making the right decisions to get you to the life you want. And you had $2 million. So money is a tool. And I think if business owners think about that as money being the tool to get them to that vision, then it's not more, I don't want to spend money.
Yeah. In fact, blood is just to bring back to my analogy before, the blood's not life, but if you don't have it, or it's not moving in the right spaces at the right time, in the right volumes, and is healthy, then you're not going to be able to live your life that you want to live. So I think it's a similar analogy where
exactly. I think very similar to, what's the other one of cash is the bloodline of business, something like that. Yeah,
that's probably the one I'm channeling.
Okay. Yeah, so that's good. And I think that also leads to, when business owners or leaders don't take time out to invest in themselves. Okay, so some people just hesitate. So how do you help them overcome that hesitation? How do you really get them to see why that is more important than, staying in the whirlwind?
Yeah, it can be a difficult one. I use the analogy of the oxygen mask on first. When you're told you're sitting in the plane at the beginning, they tell you put your mask on first before helping the kids or someone that might need you. And it's the same thing in business or in life, but business is what we're focusing on. Is that if we're not able to be there for our employees, or those that we're leading, whether it's clients or else, then we're actually not we're not being leaders. So whether we are not available because of time or emotional capacity, we're not leading those we're trying to lead. So if we don't then put ourselves first, we don't exercise or look after ourselves or get the right amount of sleep or continue to grow and study and evolve, we're actually not being there for the people we're leading. So the framework that I use around all my leadership coaching is leading self first. And we start there. So, self-awareness, understanding, how you can turn up every day, in a manner to lead that organization or lead those people, that's where we've got to start.
Yeah. I think that's important because you take care of yourself, you're in a better shape and form to then help lots of people around. So I love the mask on first analogy. Yeah. So I guess the setting habits as well that separate successful business owners and those that create long-term value from those who just survive. What do those habits look like?
So the habits, so the framework I referred to here, I'll kind of reference again, is that you start with self. So what that would mean would be routines, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual routines.
Yeah.
That for yourself, where you'd be chunking up, and also as in going back up to vision and linking it back to vision, and secondly also looking at the different time horizons as such as well. So you should doing that personally, and you should be doing that from the business perspective as well. So that's really the kind of high level, but it is ultimately in creating that routine. But within that, having a couple of elements. So one is the continuous learning approach to continuous learning, and continuing to spend time on ourselves, and allowing ourselves to. I used the word fail because I used it earlier. And being okay with that, but knowing that we're continuing on that positive trajectory of growth, either for ourselves or the organization, and in my opinion, most importantly, the people we're leading. So they're probably some of the key things, and it's the other two elements that I talk about a lot is balance, is finding that right balance, which is the balance between looking after ourselves, leading those others, looking at the business. Performance, looking at how the clients, what they need, and looking at our context within our world, and trying to get that balance right, which is probably one of the most difficult things, I think, from my experience in leading. And the last part is adaptability, or the phrase that I use, which is where to be a little more open to having to shift maybe the balance, or to be a bit more adaptable, or kind of being open to when things come at us, and not just kind of rejecting them outright because it didn't work last time, or it's an idea that necessarily, you've got something against for some reason, being open to things, and even curious, adaptability to kind of, okay, maybe we need to be a bit adaptable here. So though that mindset that we kind of bring in those different spaces, I found allows the leaders to thrive.
Yeah. And I think just talking about balance as well, I think it's subjective because it really depends on life.
Yes.
The life stage you are at, or where you are at that point in time.
Kids, family, or maybe because you've got family back in Nigeria, right? So do you need to go to Nigeria because something's happened? All the apps, 100%, yes. Yeah. And that's such a challenging conversation we have to have with ourselves as well. What am I going to prioritize? Is it my family's health in Nigeria, or is it this business? And how do I get that balance right? And only you'll know, I suppose, if you're trying to make that.
Correct.
And so I talk a lot about gut feeling and intuition. And following that, and just believing in yourself often as a leader. And that gets a lot better when you're clear on your values and clear on your purpose, and as an individual. And that's what makes the best leaders, are those that more self-aware.
And I think sometimes with that as well is definitely going back to the first thing we spoke about, vulnerability, like being vulnerable. I think one thing I'm learning, I need to be a lot more vulnerable in my relationships. I think the health, I'm definitely generally just ruthless. I always go to the gym and I always just do that. But it's communicating and being vulnerable that, look, this just feels right. This feels like this is the balance I can keep at this point in time, and relating that to family. It's like, well, this is what I can give right now, and I want to work on improving that so they get more time. I think we would definitely need to communicate that. So
yes, and that part can be you need to be. I'm not talking about you specifically. One needs to be a bit courageous sometimes with some of those key relationships, because we assume that they know what's going on inside us, even though they're really close to us. And I just had quite a vulnerable conversation on the weekend with my husband around a space that we should have probably talked probably a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But that brought us even closer.
Sure.
Even after 20 years, then you can have a vulnerable conversation.
Yeah.
And you're like, and you connect a little. And I talk about moving away from or moving towards other people in your connection with them. So whether it is with your husband or wife or child or key employee, is the relationship getting closer or is it moving apart? And just being aware of that.
Yeah. No, very, very, very interesting. Like I was speaking to a few people as well, and I was like, sometimes people see conflict as bad. But no, conflict is actually good, because as long as you get off that conflict and you're coming from a genuine space, both of you understand yourselves a lot better.
Yes.
And then it's a better relationship. So I know some people shy away from conflict, and not everyone is comfortable with it. But I think especially in that relationship field, it's really needed, because it's either you're quiet and you're just accepting things the way they are.
Yep.
Or, you're the opposite with your partner. So
that
conflict isn't bad in my opinion anyway. So.
No, it's not. I talk about positive conflict.
Yeah, okay.
That's what
exactly.
that's the phrase that I use. Yeah.
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 Okay, nice. So I guess with that as well, I said I've spoken to lots of people, and I've sat down with you as well lots of times, and we've always had great conversations. So I think you're a great business coach, and you bring good frameworks and dynamics into people's businesses, and I think lots of people should make time for that, and it's a conscious thing. Won't be like I will find time. You make the time. There's a difference, especially with lots of business owners. I think what works well for me, I block my calendar in advance for all those things, and then it just happens because you blocked it. So how can people reach you? If someone's thinking, well, okay, I need to make time. I need to create a vision, or I have a vision. I need to create a structure around this. How can they reach you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
I think the best way is to either jump on my LinkedIn page, Charlie Winn, from Orchard Coaching. But there's an email, charlie@orchardcoaching.com, or 0423 788 500 is my mobile if you want to text me, and then we'll usually set up if I don't know them at all, probably just a 15-minute chat at the beginning and check there's a connection on both sides. And then just go from there. Ultimately, I found, particularly in leadership and in business, is that it's so contextual. Your context is everything. So, some people might need, a lot of one-on-one coaching, particularly early on. Maybe there's a bit of a crisis or something going on. Or maybe there's just some people that are challenged in their business and they want to register them on a program of mine. I can help in any of those ways.
Yeah, and because you've also started a few workshops, right? You've started doing a few workshops here and there.
Yeah, there's workshop and also two leadership programs.
Okay.
So one's Leading Self program. We talked about that.
Yes,
got to start there.
Yeah,
and then there's it's called Leaders to Create Future Leaders program, which is about leading others. So both of those plus a 1-day workshop, which is one I think you referred to.
And I think this is not just for business owners. It might also be for business owners who want to develop a key member in the team that can say, well, go.
Yes,
go
absolutely.
For this.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. So for business owners out there, or just anyone thinking about getting some leadership coaching, Charlie is your guy. He would help you win in your business. Charlie Winn. I just came up with that. I'm happy with that. So reach out to him. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been amazing and great topics. And I'm sure lots of people have learned a lot.
No, I just want to thank you, Victor. You're a fantastic friend, and really pleased that it's over 3 years now we've been connected. So